everyone, it's Eric. I thought I'd do a bit of a video for you. I've managed to somehow be talked into painting a 153 for Dave Jones, who is the layout owner of Cottesmore. You might have seen him on YouTube and Model Rail Network on Facebook. I don't know how this has really ended up happening. After just a few conversations about it, I've ended up with 2 of his models to fix. I think I just got a bit carried away and was a bit bored. But yeah, so he's basically sent me a first northern 153. If I show you the box, this is what he sent me. So the blue livery with the gold star, and he wants that painted into Transport for Wales livery, which is the sort of off-white / grey with the red stripe and red doors and all that sort of stuff. And I've not done a repaint for anyone else yet, so I thought give it a go, see what happens. Can't really go too wrong, can it? Just keep painting over it. But yeah, it's just a chance to test out my airbrush. I got one for Christmas, so I've been slowly learning the ropes, and I just wanted to try something a bit more challenging. So stay tuned, and I'll show you roughly through the steps that I took to paint the model. Cheers. Say your goodbyes. Northern livery. Boing. It's been in there about 20 minutes, maybe half hour. Just thought I'd see if anything comes off yet. Let's give it a rub. Give it a good rub. There you go, it's already coming off, look. And as blue is the main colour of this, I'd assume that Hornby have just used blue plastic, which it looks like that's the case. But see there, you just rub it with your fingers, it all comes off. Pretty easy, really. So I'll just keep doing this until I've got the whole livery off, and then I can give it a coat of white primer. The reason I do this rather than sand it down is because you've got all these little details, all the rivet heads and the door locking lights, things like that. You'll end up sanding them off. So the best way is to use stripper. So I'm going to put this back in, obviously rinse the sink out and my hands. Put this back in for a while longer until this side's all nice and done, then I'll turn it over. Because obviously the IPA isn't tall enough for the whole thing, so let's do that, and then I'll come back when we're all stripped and done. Wahee. So here's the 153. Now it's soaked in the IPA for a bit longer. I've gone around all the little edges. See these sort of edges with a cocktail stick to scrape any excess paint off that's a bit stubborn. And I've managed to get probably 99.9% of it off. There's a few tiny little areas you can see in the sort of ribbing and stuff like that. You can see these little areas here. So I'll go over it again, just try and get those little bits out before I prime it. But you can see here it's done quite a nice job. Bear in mind this has only been an IPA for about 2 or 3 hours, whereas most people leave them in for about 2 days. But I think that's probably because they water down the mix, whereas I don't. But yeah, it's almost ready for priming. I'm going to just primer it white. I use just rattle can white primer from Halfords because it goes on nice and thick. You got a bit, you can rub it down a little bit to scuff the paint so it adheres nicely, and you get good coverage with it rather than trying to prime with the airbrush. I absolutely hate priming with the airbrush, it's a nightmare. So yeah, next up obviously white primer once I've got these little bits off as best I can, and then I'll come back to you, so stay tuned. So it's the next day now, and I've primed the 153. I've only done a very light coat because I want to keep as much of the rivet detail as possible. So I've used white because obviously it's going pink with fluffy dice on. I'm only joking. It's going Transport for Wales colour, so it's going to be white over the top anyway. Otherwise I would have gone for grey probably because it covers a little better normally. but you can see the rivets and all the detail are very nicely exposed where I've used paint stripper rather than sanding the model down. So now what I'm going to do is, I've had a good look over it and I'm pretty happy about how it's come out. There was a couple tiny imperfections that I fixed. So now I'm going to do orange around the top of the roof and the body side, and then I'm going to use 0.5mm masking tape, whoops, to mask off the orange cam rail line. I'm going to do it this way round, which is, I've not tried before, but it's a tip I got from someone else, because usually I try and do the cam rail line last, but it's very fiddly to mask properly. So I'm going to try it this way because it seems to have come out well for someone else that I've seen painting models. So let's crack on. So the paint I'm using is just Humber acrylics. I generally just mix the colours up that I want and tend to get a pretty good result. So I'll just, obviously for doing the orange, I'll just give it a good shake, then get a cocktail stick so I can just put a little bit of paint in the cup. Don't need much at all for doing this. I also use the same thinners from Humber to match their paint, so I thought less likely to get any sort of reactions or funny finishes than if you're using the same products. So if I just put a bit of thinners in there, mix it up. Might need slightly more orange paint, to be fair. The good thing is you can just, if you don't use it all, just tip it back into the pot, and then you just need less thinners next time. Because I always airbrush anyway, so it's unlikely that I'll brush paint any orange. So I'll just mix it up. What you can also do is put your thumb over the end of the airbrush, push down slightly and pull back, and it bubbles up inside the pot. You can see that coming to the surface now, and that just mixes up what's at the bottom. So just make sure it's all nicely mixed up, and then you can crack on. So put that back. Obviously I'll give it a little tester. I've got a large piece of paper here that I use. It's quite thick anyway. I just use this just to test the airbrush and get the spray right. If I just bring it in here, you can see at the minute it's spraying far too much, so I'll just turn that down. That's a good amount. Put it like that. And once I'm happy with it, then get cracking with the model. That's probably about right. Get the model and then just go for it, really. Right, that's the orange line. See, orange is quite a light colour, so I'll still be able to paint the white over the top of that. It'll just take another coat or two, but doing it this way round should be a lot easier than trying to do the orange line afterwards. Just trying to mask a 5mm line is very difficult. So we'll let that dry, and then what I've got, which is from a company called Jammy Dog. It's 0.5mm, 25m reel, and that is about the right sort of thickness for a camera line. So I'll mask the camera line up and then go over the tape with a cocktail stick just to make sure it's secured down, and then that masking tape will stay on there until the model's finished. And I've now masked that up as best as I can, because now it's time to do the body sides, which are sort of an off-white, a mix of like white and grey. I've been mixing the colour up myself. I've just used mainly gloss white number 22 and a little bit of 165, which although it says it's satin, it won't matter when it's mixed up and when it's all lacquered and stuff. So again, just humble paints. You see it mixing there, it's just slightly off white, just enough to give it a little bit of grey. So I'm just going to now use that.
One eternity later.
I'm done with the grey / white. Now the off-white colour on the body side is dry. I've masked those up and I've left the doors and the roof unmasked. And I've mixed up the red paint for the side using mostly gloss 19, which is Humble's basic red, and a little bit of gloss 18, which is orange, and that just gives you a more vibrant bright red to match how the doors and the top stripe look from pictures I've seen on Google. I've tried to replicate it as best I can, so it's time to paint that colour now.
Many months later.
So the red's dry enough for me to put the next layer on, so I'm just going to paint the grey roof now.
$2,000 years later.
So skipped ahead a little bit. You saw me painting the grey roof, which obviously is done, and then after that I went ahead and did the window frames, which are black. Had to do a little bit of touching up here and there. I've also painted the door seals and a couple of tiny little detail bits. Not much though, because there isn't really much on there, but as I said, I've had to touch a few bits up. I've painted the front ends, the black on the front ends. This one, the pictures I found on Google, this end doesn't have black window frames. The other end does. So I've painted them. It only goes halfway up on the right hand side. So I've tried to replicate that. See as well, this side's come out nice. I've had to blow in these corners again because I managed to mess up at one point and get a slight amount of overspray on. So didn't do myself any favours there. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's come out. So this is it lacquered now. And I think I've got the colour, considering I mixed up by eye, I think I've got the colour pretty spot on, to be honest. Because if you look at the photos, it's like an off-white / grey, very, very light grey colour. And you can tell because the handrails being white, it really shows it up. The camp rail line, so I said that I was going to mask that up first. I painted that, that was the first thing I've painted. And it's not come out too bad. There's a few little minor imperfections in it, but it's come out a lot better than it would if I'd done that last. And it did save me a lot of messing about. So I probably will do that again next time I paint something, but yeah, there you go. It's come out quite nice. I'm just waiting for the transfer pack now, which I ordered yesterday off Precision Labels, which was I think £10 plus postage. Quite reasonable. So there you go. It's nice. I'm quite happy with that, and I'm sure Dave will be happy that I didn't in fact paint it pink. So yeah, I'm gonna wait for this to fully cure because I only lacquered it about half an hour ago. And then I'm going to just loosely fit all the windows and stuff, and then I'll chuck it on the chassis just for a little mock-up picture. So then I noticed the blue interior, which is horrible, and then Googled some Transport for Wales interiors, and here's the 153 in real life. So I took the opportunity to quickly paint up the interior plastics, and then also while it was apart, I fitted a little set of LED strip lights and wired them into function 1 on the decoder. So here's the model on the test track with the lighting working. So you can probably tell here that I've skipped ahead quite a bit. No one wants to see me fitting transfers. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. So once the paint was done, gloss lacquered the model. That then gave me a good base for fitting the transfers, which are from Precision Labels. They come in a small packet. You cut them out yourself and then just soak them in water until the backing will come off. Obviously it's very fiddly, but you've got to get them in place and then try and get them to go over the rivets, which is an absolute pig of a job on this. So I do that by heating them up. So I apply the transfer over the area I want, plenty of water so that they won't sort of crease. Then when it's where I want it, I try and get a brush and go along just to get rid of the excess water without disturbing the transfer. And then I'll use a lighter and just go up quite close with just enough to just warm the transfer slightly, and eventually they'll sink over the detailing, so it'll actually sort of shrink. You can see it here if I zoom in. You can see the way that the rivets sort of stick through the transfer, which is what I wanted. But yeah, that's done. It's done both sides. You can see got the door details on there, all the Transport for Wales logos and the numbers on both sides. It's come out pretty nice. After that, gloss lacquer again over this once the transfers are fitted. That's just again using the Halford's gloss lacquer that I usually use on my models. And over the top of that, I use a satin Humbrol acrylic varnish. Again, using Humbrol products, because then there should be no issue with Humbrol varnish on Humbrol paint. So that's that done. Also, Dave wanted, well, I've managed to persuade him to fit sound. So he ordered a Loksound V5 decoder and I fitted that for him, which is, you can't see it, it's inside the roof. It's about here somewhere. It's above the lighting strip at an angle, so it will fit in. So I fit the Loksound V5 decoder with I think it's, what sound is it? It's Howes, I believe. And then I've used that to power internal lights on, which I've assigned to function 10, and I've also fitted cab lights which are on function 11, and I've made them directional and they turn off when you drive the unit. So if I just put this on the track now, just show you what's going on. So if I press F1 with a nice bit of sound there. It's got the usual sort of sounds. Then like I said, F10 I've put internal lighting. So there you go, the interior nicely lit up. F11 is directional cab light. So you can see this end's lit up now. If I change direction, then that'll extinguish and this cab will light up, like so. And it's probably a bit easier if I turn the lighting off. You can see there that it's lit up. A bit easier to see the internal lights as well then. That's just messing about with the lock programming to get that to work, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously it sounds pretty cool. Just turn the lights back on. I was getting to move off a touch. The only problem is I've not set the motor control up properly yet, so it might be a bit jerky with the Hornby motor. It goes alright. I thought I'd just take the inside out of the packaging just to give you a before and after. I'm sure you'll agree that it looks a lot better than it did before. The livery on these really does suit it. So yeah, I'm sure Dave will be very happy. So make sure you check it out on his channel Cottesmore when he receives it, because I'm sure he'll probably. But yeah, so there you have it. There's the 153 done. The only thing that's left for me to do now is paint the snowplows grey, because I forgot. But in my defence, the snowplows are part of the chassis on these, so I don't have to touch the body again. So as soon as they're grey, I'm going to just double check it all runs nicely on the layout, and then send it back to Dave. So that's that done. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that, and I think you'll agree the 153 looks wicked in its new paint job. If you enjoyed that, then please leave me a comment. Feel free to like and subscribe to the channel as well. It's always interesting to hear your thoughts. Also, make sure you follow Dave on Cottesmore, because that's where any future videos, including this model, will be. And check us out on Facebook at Harefield Road. Cheers, guys. Bye.